welcome to Writers Blockbusters, the show we treat the final edit of the movie like the script. I'm one of the hosts, Bob Rose at Thunderground Bob, and right now Jimmy's going to introduce himself.
I am Jimmy George. I am a screenwriter and script consultant, and you can find me at scriptbutcher.com.
Jamie?
And I am Jamie Nash. I am a screenwriter and the writer of Save the Cat Writes for TV and the Save the Cat Beat Sheet Workbook, and soon the Save the Cat Writes Horror, which is on pre-order. You can pre-order it. They haven't really announced it yet, but by the time people listen to this in the year 2030, people can buy it. And you can find me at jamienash.net.
Cool. Okay, so I want to start by saying I went through our entire list of episodes to ask you guys a question today. What do the following movies have in common? Mulholland Drive, Silence of the Lambs, The Princess Bride, Parasite, and The Rock. We've done all of them.
They have a Criterion collection.
And they're all in the Criterion collection. That's every Criterion movie we've done. And we're adding one today by doing The Rock, which is, yes. It's like one of those facts that I think a lot of people don't know is that The Rock was in the Criterion collection. And I own the disc.
Hell yeah.
And okay, so yeah, we're doing The Rock. And there's two reasons that I think I recommended this for our next one was, well, I mean, three reasons. I love it. One was Alcatraz has been in the news for very stupid reasons, which we won't discuss. And two, RIP to Tony Todd, who gives a psychotic fucking performance in this movie. Yeah, so, RIP. But yeah, so before we get into our talking points, we're going to go around and just say what, this movie means to us. You can say anything you want. Let's start with Jamie.
Yeah. What's interesting about this one, I saw it. I liked it enough, but it didn't make a huge impression on me in the 90s. And I think it's because I may have said this before, but something happened to me like after I saw Die Hard, where I was kind of done with fun action movies. I was like, nobody's going to beat that experience for me. I love it, and I'm done with it. And it wasn't exactly true. Like it just took me a while to get back into action. But I saw this movie opening night. I was a big Sean Connery. Like his renaissance. I saw all his movies. I think my father used to want to see Sean Connery's movies, even though my father would hate this movie because he didn't like goofiness in his movies. He wanted like more, though he liked Die Hard and he liked Lethal Weapon. So
did you see Entrapment with him?
I don't think I did see Entrapment. I think that might have come a little later.
Okay.
But yeah, I do remember seeing the one movie that sticks out, Sean Connery's Medicine Man, because they hyped that so much.
Yeah.
And I saw so many commercials, and the commercial kept being that one thing, I found the cure for the plague of the 20th century, and don't proceed to tell me how to follow up. And I was like, that's your big trailer moment line. Like, I guess the 20th century part was in, but the don't proceed to tell me how to follow up was like the big da da da. Anyway, and they played it so much that's what it like that line echoed in my head. So anyway, this movie, when I rewatched it for this, and I probably only seen it maybe 1-2 other times tops, at some point in my life. When I rewatched it for this, I liked it much, much, much better. Like I said, in the 90s, I was probably just like, I was kind of done with this kind of movie. I think I was a little confused by Nicolas Cage at the time. It was a little bit like, I'm not sure I'm getting what he's putting down, but I love all that stuff now. So I kind of really like it now. It does, to me, that there's something about Michael Bay action scenes that I think this is the reason why this movie never clicked with me. I like movies with gags, and I think Michael Bay is the gag, if this makes sense. Like, I think his camera movements and stuff are the gags. And I like movies like, I'll give you the bad example. I'm a big fan of Cobra, the Stallone movie.
Yeah.
because I like when he goes in reverse and is shooting the, and stuff like that. And there's like lots of goofy gags in those movies, and I kind of like gags. And I think that's why I never really clicked with Michael Bay, because Michael Bay is like, look at all this craft technique I can throw into like I'll give you one example. When they flip that quarter, he makes a meal out of flipping the quarter. You know what
Looks
I mean?
incredible.
It's like that shot
Yeah.
could win an Oscar, and it's there's stuff like that in it that he's kind of the gag himself. Like he's doing things that are just wild and crazy. And I appreciate that more now than I probably did in 1996. So anyway, I had a great time rewatching it to the point where I'm like, is this actually a top 10 action movie for me? And I didn't, last night when I was watching, I'm still not sure if it is, because it loses me a little once they get into Alcatraz, believe it or not. Like I kind of get bored a little bit. I'm like, well, it's okay here. But I love the beginning so much that I was starting to think maybe and now I love Nicolas Cage in it. Like I think he's the thing that in some ways sets it apart for me.
I don't know
anyway.
if you've ever said anything close to that in our 137 episodes.
Oh, really? I don't.
I mean, Jamie, if I can't remember that everything, but I don't. Jamie, you're not one to often be like, I like this more now than it might be one of my favorites. I don't think I remember you saying that.
I kind of went into it thinking I'm not going to like it too much, and I'm like,
sure.
I had a much better appreciation for things. I was just like, I've seen this. I'm kind of bored. I had maybe because they don't make anything quite like this anymore, because everything is so serious, and
unless you see a Michael Bay movie.
Yeah, it's either nowadays it's either very silly or very serious. Like it's either starring Kevin Hart and The Rock, or it's more. I mean, John Wick in some ways it isn't serious, but yeah. So they do make some things kind of like this, but this really has a lot of, and it's not on the talking points, I don't think, but tonal whiplash to it that sort of works. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed I turned it on thinking, I kind of remember this movie. And I was actually excited to watch it last night, like watching it. I was like, okay, I'm going to watch this all the way through. I'm just going to lock in and watch it. And I enjoyed it.
Nice. Jimmy?
Oh man.
I'm just shocked at Jamie being like, you don't say that. You don't say it often. I'm just saying.
It is true. Yeah. So I'm gonna shock Bob here. I have only seen The Rock once, and that was shocking. In 1996 when it came out. So what is that? 29 years. So Jesus. I saw this opening week when I was a teenager. I remember security mall, baby. And with that blown speaker on the right. Like every movie I saw there, I only heard half of it. So yeah, and I remember loving it then. It's funny to think about. When I was rewatching it, Michael Bay's style is so distinct. At 16, I wasn't the type of person who was like identifying like directors and going right. I love this. I mean, yes, I knew who Steven Spielberg was, and I knew who Robert Zemeckis was, but very few directors I knew their names at 16. And I remember loving the style of this then at 16, and I remember loving Bad Boys style and Armageddon style. So it's funny to think back and go, oh, I mean, clearly that's just like one style. Right. So, but yeah, revisiting it, I was not anticipating at all the massive amount of craft that we're going to talk about. I was like, wait, this is like really fucking great.
Criteria, baby.
From a writing standpoint. Holy shit. And like it makes very interesting subversive choices. And Jamie talked about the intro, and I mean, I know I'm sort of like flashing forward here, but like this setup is like where the meat is at, and it just, the setup just keeps going and going and going. I'm like, we're not at Alcatraz yet. Oh shit, we're still not at we're still not at Alcatraz. And yeah, I love all of it, and we're gonna go into why. And yeah, so I loved it. I kind of had similar feeling to Jamie in that, like, I remember enjoying the movie, but I did not remember it being this good. But of course, it was like 30 years had passed, and rewatching it from a craft standpoint for this purpose, I was like really pleasantly surprised at how much there was to share. So yeah, and to talk about. Yeah.
Damn. All right. I don't want to become a broken record when we do classic episodes, but like, I guess I'm the rewatcher. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't. Movies don't leave my life if I love them. That's
Yeah.
the difference between me, I guess, and like you guys are movie people. It's not like you guys aren't.
Yeah.
But for me, they just don't leave. I don't know why that. I've seen The Rock in 30 years. I've probably seen it at least 50 times. You know, I don't even know. It doesn't matter. But I'm like, I was gonna say, when I think about Hollywood, right? Like the word Hollywood and what that means to me in my brain, like by default, I think of 90s action movies, right? Like I know that's weird, but I was born in 1982. It kind of makes sense timing wise. I wasn't Jamie. Jamie was already over it. But to me, when I think of like what Hollywood means, I think of like peak big budget 90s action movies. And I was kind of thinking while watching this for this, I was like, this would be like when I think of the word Hollywood, and I had to name 5 movies, The Rock would be one of those 5 movies that made me think of what it means, what Hollywood at its peak means is like The Rock. It's like
maximum effort, like so much effort on screen.
And to add to that, I'm a huge Michael Bay fan, and this is something that like I'm admitting, and people are like, "What?" I always say I just exclude Transformers. Just like I would say I'm a huge Robert Rodriguez fan, I don't necessarily keep Shark Boy and Lava Girl and the Spy Kids movies in there. You know what I mean? There's like 2 different guys. I'm like a huge defender of Michael Bay when he's not doing the robots. Like lifelong huge fan of that. But I won't bore you guys or this podcast trying to intellectualize Michael Bay. But he's not just the Transformers guy. He's a protege of Tony Scott. You could argue that Bad Boys and this movie created a whole different style of editing that has been ripped off for 30 years. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot more to this. There's more meat to this than what we're going to talk about. But if you're interested, as I always do, I would like to plug Patrick Willems on YouTube. He's got a 2-part video series called Understanding a True American Auteur, and they're both about Michael Bay. It's just 2 really amazing videos that pretty much cover everything I would say that is great and interesting and substantial and weird about Michael Bay. And yeah, just if you're really interested in how I feel, watch those videos. But yeah, I'm a huge fan, and I'm very thankful that Jimmy and Jamie said yes to The Rock, because when I suggested it, I was like, we're not doing The Rock. I was like, they're not going to say yes to this. Well, I don't know. We never did a Michael Bay, so not that there's not other ones we could do in the future.
No, there's definitely.
What's funny is this is the one that I wanted to revisit the most. Like, nice. I think I've seen Bad Boys a few times, and I like it, but I think I like this more. Armageddon is what it is. You know, I appreciate it, but I like this one more. Pearl Harbor, it's not my thing.
I mean, that's probably the one non-Transformers I don't. He was wrong for that movie.
Right. And then like Pain and Gain is different, so I don't know about
totally different.
I don't know that would be. And Con Air I like. I definitely like. Bay. Oh, it's not Michael Bay?
No, that's.
I guess I'm thinking Brooke.
That's just same producers.
Who directed Con Air?
Simon Wells, I believe.
Simon Wells.
I believe so. Let me check.
Wow.
What if I get it wrong?
Side note: Jamie's already frozen.
Simon West. I'm sorry.
Simon West. Yeah.
Jamie, you're already frozen. We're staring at
Jamie's frozen.
Frozen Jamie.
So anyone listening know that we're looking at a frozen Jamie. It's fine. Yep.
No, that it's not Frozen. That's just the way I am.
That's just the
Well,
way you are.
I was gonna say, we usually try.
Perpetually unimpressed, except for The Rock.
Right. Well, whenever we talk about what current movies to do, I think if you guys remember, I was sort of pushing for Ambulance
Oh yeah.
when it came
Yes,
out,
you
but then
were.
it flopped, and then we kind of moved past it. But I fucking love Ambulance, because if you watch Ambulance, it's 90s Michael Bay now, but with drones.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's
I've
the
seen
same
it.
type of fare as the Rock.
Okay.
Is. It's anyway.
That's good to know.
Yeah, no, I really love Ambulance. Anyway. So, who wrote this shit, Jamie? If you're
Who
not
wrote this shit?
okay, so for a
Can't
second I was
tell
like, do
'cause
we
we
lose this
can't
completely?
see him.
Yeah. So this one has a lot of writers and rumored writers as well.
Yeah.
So let me start at the top. It was a spec script from David Weisberg and Douglas Cook are the two guys who wrote it. Let me look up. Did they have any movies after this?
I don't actually know.
All my notes are about the rewriters and not them, for reasons. I'll look it up in a minute. Okay, so yeah, they created the core concept. So they had Alcatraz, chemical weapons. I think they even had Godspeed as a chemical expert, and he had some kind of guide, though I think Mason changed heavily when Connery came on. And then it got rewritten from the studio. So that sold like Hollywood Pictures, and I think Bruckheimer and stuff came on board, and Simpson came on board to kind of guide it through. And then Mark Rosner was hired by the studio to do like the fixed structure. Like Weisberg and Cook were almost baby writers, new writers. This is their big breakthrough. And then Rosner was brought in to actually, give it that professional polish and things like that. But what I've learned through interviews and things like that about Bruckheimer in particular is he was one of these guys that liked to throw the coolest writers in town on projects. And he just had them all he'd call them in and say, hey, do a draft of The Rock. And, hey, you got 3 days to spend on this? Do you mind giving it a spin? And he just hire people to do like a few days. And the biggest one that he had was Jonathan Hensley. And he came in and did structure and pacing. He did a lot of stuff, I think specifically for Michael Bay. Like those two worked together. And we'll talk about them in a second. But they also brought in Aaron Sorkin. Did a pass on this? That's what I've heard.
Awesome.
Yeah, and mostly he did like the government and the politics and the Pentagon stuff.
I can totally. It feels like The West Wing. Absolutely.
And then on top of that, Quentin Tarantino did a draft.
Yeah.
And I think he did a lot of the Nick Cage stuff. I think he did a lot of the goofier stuff, the wilder stuff. I wonder if he did the stabbing in the heart thing as well. Every time I watch it, I'm like,
I've seen the movie. I've seen people accuse it of stealing from Pulp Fiction, but then when you know that, it's like
did he put that in there?
Did he add that in?
Did he add that part? So I think that things like the Beatles stuff and, some people say he probably did that.
I actually got a note about that, Jamie, from the thing.
Okay.
That was actually Nick Cage.
Okay.
Nick Cage, he read the script and he said that later in the script, I reference Elton John as the Rocket Man, and it comes out of nowhere. So he said, I asked if I could add this in. And it's at the part when he's looking at the Beatles' White Album,
right?
And he was like, the whole reason he did that was so that he would be a music fan and establish that part later.
Fantastic.
That was all Nick Cage. It wasn't even in the script.
Okay.
I love it.
Good. So yeah, he did like 3 days, and it was dialogue, kind of a dialogue polish. And then Scott Rosenberg, I've heard him talk about that he worked on almost all of Bruckheimer's projects back in that time. So he worked on Armageddon and Con Air and stuff like that. And he did a dialogue pass and as well. So he added some stuff, and he's kind of like especially during that time, he was kind of like a Tarantino kind of writer. You know, he'd be punching up dialogue, trying to make it fun and give it jokes and stuff like that. I also heard Ed Solomon did a pass. I'm not
Really?
I'm not exactly sure what he did, but
Who here?
but he
There's
and then
a lot of people I love.
yeah, and then
working on this movie.
and this is how like a lot of these Bruckheimer movies were. Like he just drag in people he liked. He'd just be like, "Who's a cool guy that could give us a line of dialogue or two?" And he'd just have him do like a pass. And then Richard Price, who did Clockers and Color of Money, apparently he came in for some of the military stuff and some of the villain's plan kind of stuff or something, or maybe the rumor I also heard was maybe he just kind of gave notes or something like that. So anyway, it was a long list of folks that did stuff. And then Connery actually when Connery came on board, he kind of, in some ways he twisted the character to the more James Bond kind of thing. He kind of like, he added the whole MI6 part and things like that. And it kind of added the Bond in exile and the
yes.
and
I was gonna ask, when did that stunt casting happen?
On the commentary, Michael Bay actually said that Connery said he viewed it as playing James Bond without being James Bond.
Yes.
And Michael Bay himself said, I viewed it as a rusty James Bond.
It's, you know what it reminded me of? It's kind of like what we see when we see the reboots now.
Yeah, a little bit.
Of the franchises where, you get the old character dusts off.
This is like Jurassic World 3.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It feels just like that, but it's in 1996.
I mean, there's microfilm. And,
yeah, it's James Bond, but he's been locked up and made, erased.
Or it's like the My Blue Heaven of Goodfellas. You know how My Blue Heaven is like a semi sequel to Goodfellas, but it's not.
Yep.
It's just
It's kind of
a hell of a pull there, Bob.
The legacy.
Yeah.
The legacy sequels of sorts.
The legacy non-official sequel.
Yeah, it's like a non-canon sequel to the Connery Bond movies.
Which, honestly, I think it's something I used to try to do as a concept creator. Is I used to think, what's Bond 50 years later, and I'd come up with ideas. So anyway, I think it's a good way to brainstorm concepts. Is actually
right,
but then don't make it Bond. It's unofficial.
Right.
And
I got a few notes
for
writing specifically that has to do with stuff you were talking about, Jamie.
Sure thing.
Michael Bay actually, he turned down this movie like several times because the script was not finished, and he refused. Michael Bay, we're talking about here, refused to work on it because he didn't like how the second half or something. And the only reason he said yes was literally because of Simpson and Bruckheimer asking him to. Like, they're the ones, and they promised him they would have it rewritten, hence kicking off the series of events that you just talked about. And after it came out, and this is from his mouth, it's not just me saying it, Michael Bay was really mad about Jonathan Hensleigh. Is that how you say it?
Yep.
He was really mad that Jonathan Hensleigh's name didn't get poster credit for writing.
Right.
Because he said he views it as he made the movie written by Jonathan Hensleigh, in his opinion. He did not make the movie written by Mark Rosnan.
Right.
He said that on the commentary track. I didn't make that movie.
Yep.
And he felt that denying Hensleigh was setting a bad precedent for writers in Hollywood. Like, he was he sounded angry about it. Like,
no, I had the same thing in my research, that he was very public and angry that his guy didn't get credit. And the truth of the matter is, arbitration favors the original writers. They almost always get credit. And then it usually hands out credit to like one other person. Like, that tends to be, or one other team. It tends to be how arbitration goes, because the other writer asked to write 50% of the script. And it's hard, after you say one writer wrote 50% of the script, it's hard to say, well, this other writer also wrote 50% of the script, and the original writers, it gets a little messed up. So usually it ends up being like one person or the other, and somebody gets left out. The WGA does have a new like additional writing credit now that came in the last strike. However, I don't think it's tied to residuals, which is the big thing here. Because residuals for a movie like this, I mean, they could have earned that writer tens of millions of dollars.
He basically says that on the commentary, like it denied him not only money from it, but it denied him money for future jobs.
Yes.
Because he couldn't just say like, "Here, I did this." He was denied that opportunity.
It goes beyond credit and really gets into cold hard cash. I mean,
is that the same guy that directed like the Tom Jane Punisher movie?
I'd have to look it up.
Okay. Sorry.
So, the one other thing that related to Mason, the character Mason, Arnold said he was approached and he passed on the role. So that shows you how different the character must have been,
right?
If Arnold could have played that role, you know. Yeah, and
it is the same. It is the Punisher guy.
Oh, it is. Yeah,
it's that. Yeah, it's the Tom Jane Punisher.
So Arnold was approached. I mean, talk about to your point, Bob. 90s Hollywood, man.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think the original script was kind of geared toward that type of.
Would Arnold have been Goodspeed though? Like
I thought he was going to be Mason, but I could be wrong.
He couldn't be Goodspeed. That wouldn't work.
Yeah.
But then again, in the original,
I'm a chemist. You know,
in the Nick Cage on the commentary, Nick Cage said in the original script, Goodspeed wanted to become a field agent and get into the action.
Right.
He desired that, and then that completely went away.
I assumed Arnold was basically playing Commando. You know what I mean? Like he's playing his usual character, and he's in, you know, or the guy from Predator or whatever. Matrix. Dutch. Is it John?
John Matrix is Commando and Dutch is Predator.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. So I just assumed that's who he would probably be. It was like that guy.
Welcome to the Rock.
Welcome to the Rock.
That would change the tone of the movie completely. Not necessarily terrible, but
yeah. So that's all I had in the rating side of it. Let me flip over to the box office tab. So this movie made $335 million worldwide, 134 million domestic.
That's without inflation?
That's without inflation, yes.
Okay.
And to put this in perspective, to do a list.
The list.
and it does kind of show you the 90s in some ways to do the list here. So 1996 box office. And it shows you that, you know, action was a real deal thing. And I guess it still is to an extent when you look at Mission Impossible today, you know, it's still there as a blockbuster filmmaking. But Independence Day was number one.
Yeah.
That was
same year as this.
And this is domestic. So number one domestic, Independence Day was at 306. Twister was at number 2 at 241. Mission Impossible, the original, was at 180. It's crazy to think Mission Impossible was,
like literally came out like 2 weeks ago, number 8.
Yes.
Like holy shit.
Why don't we have The Rock number 9?
That's true.
I guess Sean Connery couldn't be in it. The Nutty Professor was number 5 at 128.
Wow.
Hercules.
Ransom was. I didn't realize Ransom was that big of a hit.
That's a big hit. That's Ron Howard, right?
And Mel Gibson, yes, of the two of them.
And that one is 125 million. The Birdcage, man, huge hit.
Hell yeah.
124 million. A Time to Kill, 101, 101 Dalmatians, and First Wives Club round out the 10.
Hell yes.
And just to
love
mention
First Wives Club.
Just to mention Arnold, he came in with Eraser at 99 million. So even Eraser, kind of a lesser Arnold action movie, was almost hitting triple digits at the point.
And the budget for this was 80.
I did not look up the budget.
I know. I think on
much?
the commentary. I think on the commentary I heard 80.
Wow, that's big money.
There's a lot though, man. There's
big money for that.
San
for that
Francisco
time.
Sequence and the Alcatraz and the sets. And
it makes sense. It's just expensive. That's a lot of money.
They need at some point they said they needed more money, and Michael Bay was like, he got
Sean
Sean
Connery,
Connery
yeah,
to come into the office with
right,
him,
right,
and he basically said this boy needs more money, and they
right,
did it.
right.
So
Yep.
because they couldn't say no to him.
And honestly, a movie with Sean Connery isn't going to be cheap in the 90s. He's not doing a discount for The Rock.
Right.
You know, he's getting the highest amount of money he's probably ever been paid for this movie, to make this movie. So you're going to, once you pay him whatever he got paid back then, $20 million or something, you're going to make the movie for $80 million.
It's a big deal. We were talking amongst ourselves before this, and it was, for anyone younger, they don't understand what a big deal it was for Sean Connery to be in this movie. Like, it's a huge thing. It probably, now, if you have no perspective, you just watch it. It's fun, but it's not.
I can't even compare to who it would like.
Yeah, like it's like James Bond.
Daniel Day-Lewis in The Rock.
Yeah,
not quite, but
yeah, I can't.
Well, it has to be somebody. It would now. It would be somebody who was famous in the '90s.
Well,
that's what I mean.
James Bond.
You know who would
but
be?
Then you could just say Mission Impossible.
It's not exactly it, but it's kind of like Harrison Ford in a Marvel movie.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, but
that's as close as I can go. Yeah,
and that didn't go over the same.
It doesn't feel as exciting.
No,
maybe because Sean Connery was still kind of Sean Connery in The Rock, where Harrison Ford is still Harrison Ford, but he's not like swashbuckling Harrison Ford anymore.
And The Rock also treats him like this mythic character.
It does.
Yes.
Like even the score when he has that that like ditty, the Scottish ditty or whatever.
Every time
there's something like mystical about Mason in general in the movie. It like looks at him as though he were James Bond, whereas I don't think that Marvel did that with.
It brings in the audience's feelings for his career.
Yeah, right.
In a way.
Also, Harrison Ford
tangible.
Was replacing a dead actor and stuff. It's not the same.
In a weird sort of way, probably because of the time, the era Sean Connery came from. All of his movies kind of were like, it's James Bond, because even Indiana Jones, like when he was in Last Crusade, they kind of got him because it was like, okay, now he's passing the torch to the new Indiana Jones.
And Indiana Jones was kind of like the James Bond of America.
Exactly. So, and in a lot of movies, he kind of played, I'm not sure, Unforgiven, Untouchables. He quite did that, but
I mean, he's not really James Bond in Highlander.
No,
but
that's true.
There's examples, but they're few and far between.
The Robin Hood movie or whatever.
Man, we should do Highlander someday.
Hell fucking yeah.
Not before we do League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
LXG. Call it LXG, Jamie. LXG. The true title of it.
LXG. A movie I still think they should reboot to this day because it's
a great concept.
It's a fun
concept. It really
concept.
is. Yeah, it's a really great concept. Okay, do you want to get into these setups or whatever you want to call what we did?
Yes.
The three-hander.
So we decided the one thing really interesting that Jimmy pointed out about this movie was it kind of does 3 setups. And the one we're going to setups for characters, kind of, I wouldn't necessarily say character arcs because I'm not sure that Hummel arcs more as a tragic arc in some ways. But there's 3 characters it sets up, and it does almost full-on setups for each one of these characters. So we'll start with Ed Harris's character. And I wrote some stuff up, and I have a lot of extra stuff I'm going to talk about that we might not talk about with the others because it's specific to villains. And the one thing I find so interesting, and honestly, I think it's what makes this movie a little different, is the villain isn't really, he's kind of a hero. He's kind of a villain.
He's kind of right.
He's kind of right. He has honor, There's a lot of positives to his character where you kind of like him. And even in the end, he doesn't plan to fire the missiles. He's kind of still a good guy. Like he's not going to kill all the innocent people in San Francisco, even though he's got to the precipice of it.
Ed Harris said in his mind, he never planned on doing it.
Right. He never planned on doing it.
It never was an option.
That translates. That's how I read the movie. is that
Right.
he would have never done it. This guy would never do that. Like because he never has that like getting so desperate point that he's just going to fire, you know, or something like that. He's still kind of an honorable character in the end. So one thing when I talk to clients and stuff about writing action movies in particular is, and I mentioned this before, back in the 90s, there was, and I can never remember which one it was, and I even posted, I thought William Martell might know, but there was a, one of the studios when you walked in had painted on the wall, "What's the villain's plan?" That's what it said. It was in big bold letters. It was, "What's the villain's plan?"
Sounds like my notes.
Yeah. And it was that important that if you were going to pitch an action movie to like Joel Silver or one of these companies, you know, one of these people that made all these action movies back then, that was a question you were going to get. Like today, it's like, why now or whatever, you know, why you for this movie? There's all kinds of questions.
No, today it's what superpowers does the villain have?
What superpowers does the villain have? But yeah, back then it was, what's the villain's plan? And it was so important. And what I realized is if you're brainstorming your action movie, you know, after you get through maybe some of the basics of your brainstorm, like I think it's very worthwhile to very early on just kind of spend time figuring out the villain's plan. Because if you look at it, and here's the other thing, the other classic trope of screenwriting or writing in general is the villain always thinks they're the hero, right?
Right.
So the way I like to talk to clients about this is, don't think in terms of an evil villain, think in terms of a wounded villain. Like how are they wounded? Like what's the wound? What's the thing that they're hurting from? And I'm not sure, there's a lot of motion at my door today. There's a lot of like, I'm not sure that Hans Gruber has a wound, but I think if you approach it from like, what could drive a character like this? What could make him think that the world is just there for the taking and he's got to steal instead of be like a great businessman with his brilliant mind and ideas? Did he get fired as a CEO or something, or embarrassed, or, you know, there are ways you can approach it if you think of a wounded villain as opposed to an evil villain, that makes the villain, while not necessarily empathetic, but you can understand the cold, hard logic that they approach. And I think this character might be one of the easiest to track. I'm not sure it's
absolutely.
I'm a Hans Gruber guy all day long. But I think this character, just craft wise, you can just follow, you know, what's up.
He should be referenced up there with some of the best movie villains ever, but you don't hear it that often.
Right. Yeah. No,
it's so complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I think one of Ed Harris's best performances, if I'm honest.
And honestly, as much as I've only seen this movie 3 times, this character, it's a shorthand for me. Like when I'm talking to collaborators and stuff, and we come up with certain villains, this type of villain, this is a type of villain that, you know, I'll be like, well, it's kind of like Ed Harris in The Rock, and we'll start talking in that direction. So let's just briefly talk opening image. So opening image, I always say there's a lot of ways you can start, you know, opening image, but one of the most common ways in action and horror in particular, and probably sci-fi too, is to start with the conflict, to start with the obstacle, to start with the villain, to start with the villain's plan in some ways. Start in the middle of the villain's plan. Now, there's another way I often pitch that you can start a movie, which is start with the shard of glass. Some movies like Finding Nemo or something like that start with the shard of glass. The shard of glass being the wound the hero has, you know, almost like the prologue to the arc in some ways. It's like, why is our hero so flawed? Some horrible thing happened in their past, and we explore that, or somehow we explored the shard of glass. In this case, the movie's opening scenes explore the villain's shard of glass, which is interesting. And we don't see the actual shard of glass, but we kind of do. We see the funerals. We see the flags being draped over top of the coffins.
Even the heavy rain is a metaphor.
The heavy rain. We
Yeah.
see him talking to the grave, almost like his moral compass or his life.
Right.
You know, is the moral compass is gone, so now he's maybe, you know, I'm going to say solely focused.
It's his catalyst, basically. Like,
yeah.
she's dead, so.
She's dead. They didn't really explain how that means. Like, he never has a long speech. Like, after she died, you know, I'm going to do.
You don't need it, though.
You can fill in the blanks.
Yeah. You get the feeling that here's somebody that's focused on legacy now and questioning everything they did and the pain they caused and how unjustly the people that died under his command were treated.
She was the last thing holding him back from doing this.
Exactly.
Yeah, probably.
So it starts with that. So we see the shard of glass, we see the wound, we see the flaw in some ways. Like now, because his flaw now is that the only way he can get justice for these dead, you know, special forces, Marines or whatever they are, black ops people, is to do this act of war, basically, which is what he knows. And that's all set up in that first couple minutes in a really strong Michael Bay montage sort of way. So then we actually get to his plan right away, but it's the plan in motion. We start to see the plan, and relating to kind of going outside the setup, but sticking with the opening image thing. Another thing this movie does really, really well, which I see a lot of new writers when they send me stuff. I'm not a fan of certain types of openings that they get the point that you need to open with action and stuff like that. But a lot of the opening images I get are like 2 or 3 pages of like gunfire and ambiguous stuff. And I don't know the characters like that are shooting the guns or fighting. I don't know what they're after. Sometimes it just ends in the middle, just to kind of like the checkbox. I did the assignment, you know, I did the shooting part, check, you know, so now I can get to the regular setup.
Missing the why.
It's missing the why.
Right.
And
always missing the why.
I always feel like these opening scenes, and my favorite of these opening scenes, what I strive to do, they have twists and turns, and they usually have a punchline in the end. There's something in the end that says something. And I don't know what it is, but something doesn't go according to plan. Some bigger stakes are raised. Something happens. And in this one, when the men get trapped inside with the chemical.
There's one guy.
The one guy gets trapped. I think that's what I'm always looking for in these opening images. It'd be very easy to just have the bad guys come and shoot, you know, put it on the thing and the helicopter flies off. But to get somebody trapped and show again that they care about each other, you know, they're sad that this person's dying. It's not just like, screw him, let's get on the plane kind of thing. Which
Specifically Hummel is disturbed by it. Yeah.
He's disturbed by it. Which if they went the other route, like screw him, that would just be another, but this is another element of character building, of the honor, of the empathy, of that this isn't your usual villain. Like he cares about these people.
And his second in command even says sorry to the guy.
He says sorry, but they're also know the stakes. It also shows it. The interesting thing is it sets up the weapon in some ways. So it sets up how deadly and dangerous it is. So anyway, that's all that fun stuff that it does. But Hummel, in the meantime, we get all kinds of, there are things that need fixing. So the things I tracked were things that need fixing and rooting resume. And the other guys might have tracked different things for different. So mine are just kind of a generic,
I did rooting resume. So
mine are kind of a generic.
It's going to be awesome. I did them too.
Okay.
So as far as changes in so things that need fixing are a save the cat idea. And if Blake Snyder proposed that in the setup, which is usually your first 10 or 12 pages. In this movie, it's actually much longer. Jimmy, do you have it clocked, like how long you think the setup is? It's like 30, 40 minutes.
It's about 58 minutes.
Yeah, it's long.
Before they get back to Alcatraz, all of them.
It's long because it's got action sequences. It's got 3 characters. It's got different POVs.
The Sean Connery section, the Mason section, is almost a half an hour.
Yeah.
These are like 12-ish minutes.
Does that include the car chase?
Yes.
Because the car chase was inserted by Michael Bay.
Yeah.
Just to set up more stuff.
But I was like, we're still on Sean Connery's setup. We're still there?
Yeah.
Keep going, Jamie. I'm sorry.
No worries. So things that need fixing, the idea is the character's flawed. And because of that flaw, there are things that need fixing in their life. And they usually break down into a few different categories, which I'm going to mention, and then I'm going to go through to see, what they could be. Now, usually these are for heroes. These are not for villains. Sometimes you see this kind of stuff in villains, but this case, it totally works for the villain. So that's what's interesting about it. So changes, the number one is changes in attractiveness or personality. And I think in his case, it's personality. I think the fact that he's kind of desperate and apologizing at his wife's gravestone, that's the change in personality that we assume is happening. Like he's kind of, there's some loss there. He's kind of haunted. He's broken. So I think there is a change in personality you can infer from that. Strained personal relationships. So number one, his wife is dead, whatever that means, the grief and stuff like that. There's no mention of other family through this. So,
could his relationship with the government count?
Absolutely.
I think so. And that I actually also include that in another one that we have.
Oh, sorry.
But no, I believe it works. I believe it works.
You feel it. That's what matters.
Yep. And I think, he refers to like his fellow Marines and fallen soldiers. They're almost like family that have also died. So he feels like all that stuff is kind of going. Not being entrusted, able to handle responsibility. And so this is the interesting one. He spent like decades risking his life and doing these missions, only to have the government like disown everything, right? And he's trying to prove that he can still lead and matter or make a difference, do good, I think, in some ways. But the problem is now he's going rogue. So he sort of disqualifies himself from being trusted ever again.
There's tensity there.
Yeah, there's tensity. There's tensity. So the next,
it's like a rogue war hero or something. I don't know.
Yeah, honorable rogue or something.
Honorable rogue.
Yeah.
Honorable rogue.
So the next one is being invisible to key people. And this is the one where he's like the system. He's almost invisible to them. He's unimportant, and the politicians and stuff like that. The media, that they don't get a hero's welcome. He's kind of invisible to the world.
They want to keep him invisible too.
They want to keep him
entire movie.
Yep. Which is interesting because in some ways the Mason character has similar beef, I think.
Yep, that's exactly when I go. You're almost describing. I'll save it.
Okay.
Yes.
And then
his government is Womack.
Right. And kind of along the same lines, others don't believe in you. You've given up on yourself. I think the others could be the system and stuff like that. There's, whether they believe in him or not. But he wants to be believed without violence, but that's failed. They won't listen to him,
Yep.
So
100%.
Yeah. So then we get to the rooting resume, and the rooting resume is the idea of the rooting resume is that, and I have in Save the Cat Rates for TV, there's a rooting resume as well as the beat sheet workbook. It's basically a checklist of reasons we root for people, characters that are set up early in the first 10 to 12 pages of the script. Again, this one's like 30 pages. And again, the villain has a great rooting resume in this. We could almost root for the villain in this. And some of the categories I have for this, he's an underdog. And again, he's a general, but he's literally fighting against the entire U.S. military industrial complex. Okay, so he's an underdog. He cares deeply about someone or something, and that's the fallen soldiers, his men. He cares about them. They're important to him.
He cares about honor.
He cares about honor. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And he tries hard to make things better. And that's what he's doing. He's trying to make things better for these people. He's trying to change the world. he's fun or charismatic. And I think the Ed Harris casting helps us a lot. He's not like a mustache. He's like a guy you can see as men would like, his, and again, all his demeanor, how he carries himself. He has some charisma.
Yeah, there's like some interesting tensity there with the fact that like he's super respected by his men on the boots on the ground men, but completely disrespected by the government. Yeah.
Right.
You see that through David Morse's character.
Yes.
Like they call each other by their first names. They're obviously friends in real life.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Beyond the military.
And there's a point of likability to that. There's something cool about his guys like him, even if the brass doesn't, because it kind of says, he doesn't just follow orders. He makes right decisions.
He's a good man.
He's a good guy. Yeah. We know his struggle. So a lot with the death of his wife and the feelings he has for the men that have died and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
His pain is kind of personal, and it's right there from the opening image. We wish we were more like him. And this is where the honorable stuff, the willing to die for the integrity and lack of moral compromise kind of comes from. He's walking this kind of knife's edge. Not that we'd go and fire missiles at San Francisco. But even that, he doesn't seem willing to do that in the end. So it kind of pays off this character.
It was all a bluff.
It was all bluff. He's just like us. Beneath the uniform is this kind of grieving husband and forgotten veteran, and a man betrayed by the system, which I think a lot of people can feel betrayed by the system. Mm-hmm. And his cause is very relatable in that way. And he's the best at something is the last one. He seems like he's top general. He's the guy you go to.
The general.
They list off his accomplishments in the war
room. I got
room,
that later. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're the things I saw in the setup that are just picked off in the setup. But one last thing, back to the villain's plan. I think if you sketch out the villain's plan and you say, what would the villain's plan be if it went to perfection, right? When you're brainstorming, if you did this, usually what happens is you could start mapping out the beats. The catalyst is the first beat where the hero is somehow affected or becomes aware of the villain's plan. That's the catalyst. Like it's like you can just slot it in. You can ask yourself, well, how does the hero either get affected by like let's say their wife is killed or something like that, or or something like that, or
the collateral damage of the villain's plan is the hero's entrance into it. That's very I love
Die
that,
Hard.
Jamie.
Die Hard.
Yeah,
Die Hard.
He's in the.
Jamie, I love
building.
this as a brainstorming tool for the beats.
Yeah. And usually, so in some cases, it's just being called into the mission, like Indiana Jones, or in this case, it's like, hey, the bad guy's doing the stuff. We need to bring in this expert to fight him. So that's where they collide into the villain's plan. The break into two usually is more hero related. It's when they commit to stopping the villain, but it's still related to the villain's plan. But here's the interesting one. The midpoint is usually not always, but it's usually a moment where the villain's plan is interrupted by the hero and the villain needs to take some serious action. Like that's usually what happens at the midpoint. So if you look at your villain's perfect plan and say, when does the hero get such a victory or become such a nuisance to the villain that they look at him and say, I have to do something? That's often the midpoint. So that's how the villain's plan can help you brainstorm the midpoint. And then the all is lost is when the villain takes it to the hero in such a way that seemingly eliminates the hero first, but doesn't. And anyway, these things can help you. So the bad guys close in a lot of times becomes about the villain having to kind of come up with plan B to stop the hero. That's what tends to happen at the midpoint.
I've never approached it this way. I love this, Jamie. I love it.
Yeah. So anyway, that's an exercise I have specifically for action movies. If you use the villain's plan first.
I bet you could totally use it in a monster movie though for horror. You could totally take that from monsters.
Probably could. So anyway,
like
that's
I can see Freddy Krueger doing hitting all those beats, man.
It's true. It's true. So that's it. That's what I had for that character.
I guess, yeah. Well, I got Stanley. I chose Stanley, right? What I did was basically, thank you, Jamie, for setting up the rooting resume, because I chose 5 of the rooting resumes that I thought best fit. You could argue all of them, but I just wrote down the 5 that I thought best fit Stanley Goodspeed. They're underdogs, right? Stanley isn't an action hero. He's not a field agent. He's a passionate chemical engineer that would fall into the category of nerd or weirdo or outsider to the common person. And in the context of the movie and his journey, he's absolutely a rookie in over his head, right? So total underdog. You could argue that the nerd thing especially stands out when he does that champagne rant to Womack. Like, I think that kind of that moment makes him an obvious nerd. Like, doesn't even realize what he's about to face. He's just rambling on with facts. So, and the one thing I wrote down for that was from the commentary. The Nick Cage asked for his name to be changed from Bill to Stanley. It was originally Bill, and he thought Stanley exemplified what the character was supposed to be more. Bill didn't seem as much like a chemical, a chemical scientist or whatever. I think it's a good change. It really is
impactful. Yeah,
it's an impactful change. It really is. For the second rooting resume, I went with they care about something. I mean, he cares about his wife. He now cares about he cares about his kid that's on the way that he just found out about. He cares about human life. His despair over the state of the world is why he was hesitant about bringing another life into it. He actually cares about the well-being of a child that he didn't even intend to have.
Yeah.
So he does care about like human suffering, in that way. The next one I chose was they're fun. I mean, straight up, Stanley is given most of the comedy in the movie. I think it's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
The one interesting fact I have about this is that if you listen to the commentary, Nick Cage struggled with that until he saw the movie and he got it. He struggled with it on set, saying comic relief lines and stuff, but he got it in that in the movie he serves as the function of the observer of what's going on and the fish out of water. So
he's almost the audience surrogate.
He's almost the audience, right? The audience can't relate to the chemical expert.
Yes, exactly.
But everything else, he's the audience, right? Like how nuts everything is. The other rooting resume I went for was we wish we were more like them. Stanley is self-sacrificing. He's relatably afraid of all the dangers surrounding him. He cuts through the BS when he needs to, especially with chemical mumbo jumbo. Like he knows when he knows something, he knows it, and he does. Like he gives the what for to Sean Connery in that one scene, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's fair to say he doesn't give up.
No.
And he's violently forced to overcome all of his fears. Mm-hmm. He's also very loyal to Mason in the end.
He's even loyal to him in the beginning.
He is, with his daughter, right?
With his daughter, he has the chance to like make him look bad, and he makes him look good.
Yeah,
right?
He is a loyal and honorable friend to somebody he barely knows.
They achieve that quickly,
and he recognizes the brokenness of Mason and kind of has empathy for the situation, right? They're the best at something. I don't think I need to explain this really. If he wasn't the best, he wouldn't be in the movie.
Yeah.
that's the only reason he's there.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to add to this that I really like that this movie does. So a lot of times, when you're writing a script, you wonder how to introduce your character. And the one piece of advice I always give that this movie does a great job of for Ed Harris's character and Nick Cage's character is they show them doing what they do best, right?
Yes, right.
So, and
the lab scene.
The lab scene. So instead of just having, a day at work, we're doing the thing,
The breakfast scene.
the breakfast scene. Instead of doing that, they give you an action scene. They give you like a mini movie. Both of them do.
So
yeah,
I actually wrote down past this. The only extra I wrote for this was like a little couple setups and payoffs that I thought were, and I wrote that down, Jamie. I said the baby doll lab scene establishes that while he's committed and good at his job, he's absolutely not willing to shove a needle into his heart, even in the face of death. But at the same time, it establishes he can absolutely work under intense pressure. And his quote at the end of the movie, "I love pressure," almost is a callback to this direct scene.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and of course, he's finally forced to stab himself in the heart to save his own life. Like, that is a moment of growth, whether how insane it is, right? Yeah. And his office intro, we kind of already covered this a little bit, but it establishes that even though he's not a field agent, he's a good marksman.
Yeah,
it starts with him. Yeah, it starts with him shooting that.
Oh yeah,
dart gun. Yeah,
it's
a bullseye.
Dart gun that sets the Barbie doll thing on fire.
Yeah.
Right.
So it establishes that he actually knows how to shoot.
Yeah.
And then it establishes the music fandom. You know, it actually that little minute scene establishes two things that will pay off big in the movie. The scene right after the car chase. This is an interesting one that I didn't realize, except for listening to the commentary. And it happens a few times in the movie, but the notable one is Nick Cage yells at Sean Connery and calls him an a-hole. And if you guys remember that,
yep.
But he doesn't say asshole, and that was actually a choice by Nick Cage. In the first half of the movie, he decided to be a guy that wouldn't fully swear. And then he said, and if you watch it, the end of the commentary, he's like, when he shoves the green VX gas thing into Fry's mouth, he says, "Eat that, you fuck." And that's and to Nick Cage and to the audience, that's supposed to signify his full transformation. He's a guy that's willing to fully swear.
He's gonna say the F word.
Right. I didn't ever. I've seen this movie so many times. I never picked up on it that he didn't swear in the beginning of the movie.
I love it.
It's like the old college film trick. Like, I'm never going to show red, but then when he bleeds in the end, that's when I'm going to show red.
That's when, right. And the one thing I was like, okay, I asked the question. I know we're just doing setups, but I was thinking about his arc, and I was like, would the Stanley Goodspeed at the end do the same thing if you put him at the beginning? Of course not. I think he's completely changed. But then I was like, I watched this movie 3 times for this podcast just because I enjoy it. And I was like, one of the 3 moments to me that stand out about really push his transformation forward. And I think it's all the SEALs being slaughtered, because at that moment, he's left almost completely alone on the rock with a stranger pretty much. And he now realizes the extreme danger more than he ever did, right? The second one is the big one, I think, is him shooting a man to save Mason's life when they're in that mine cart.
Yeah.
That's him using his marksmanship to actually save some, and he's taking a life. And then the third one is the one
finally kills for the first
time. He finally kills to save a life, and he knows how that feels. And then, of course, the third one I would say would be stabbing himself in the heart, overcoming a fear so deep that he almost died for it at the beginning of the movie. Like he would have rather died.
That's definitely an old way, new way right there, for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, that's everything that I wrote down.
That's great.
Yeah.
One thing you guys said without saying, that's my favorite thing about both of those opening scenes, is we talked a lot about on the show how the best way, my favorite opening scenes are mini versions of the movie, right? We talked about how in Jurassic Park, a dinosaur gets out of the cage and eats the people who were trying to cage it. And
right.
It is the movie, right? In this one, Hummel and his team are sieging a location, taking over with hostages and wielding nuclear weapons, or deadly weapons, and then Stanley is diffusing a deadly bomb. I mean, it's both of those intros are mini versions of what the movie is, which is my favorite thing about the movie.
That's cool. Yeah,
Edgar Wright is really good at doing the movie before the movie starts.
It's like if you just look at it on its own. I
On a
bet you.
micro
Yeah,
level.
all of the Edgar Wright movies.
Yeah,
like,
it all happens before it happens.
Yeah, there's like a 2-minute version of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always try to challenge my clients. Like, if I read your opening scene and I can't tell you what the movie is about, then it's not doing a good enough job of what I just described there being the movie encapsulated in a single opening scene. So yeah.
The other thing I wanted to mention for this character, that this movie does a really good job. Yeah. Because I see this a lot when I do consult on scripts. I give this note a lot, and this movie does this really well, which it forces Stanley to be part of the action, even when maybe it would a gut level might say he's not. So, for example, the interrogation scene. It would
right.
You could have easily just left him at the window and had all the stuff happen and had Sean Connery sign the paper and stuff like that without Stanley being a part of it. And a lot of scripts I read do that. And the note I give is there some way to get Stanley involved in this?
Yep.
You know, he's standing on the sideline. Similarly, the car chase scene. I mean, it makes sense, of course. I mean, it would seem weird not to have Nick Cage in that scene, but
he's just standing there watching it happening.
Well, he would have been so far away too, because they go right. It would be like, what?
But the fact that he's not a field agent and stuff like that, and you got to take out the other guys, so he's the guy.
Mm-hmm.
You know. And I see a lot of
the chase also foreshadows that he's not incompetent.
That's right. That's right.
You know what I mean? Like, this isn't about him being incompetent. It's about him getting out of his shell.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's just, I so often see people that they sideline their heroes. And my note is, you see that thing that side character is doing that, you know, in the scene? Give that to your hero.
Yep,
Find a way to give it to your hero.
Put your side character on the side.
Put the side character on the side. The hero needs to be the one doing the thing. Even when sometimes it's not obvious or that's not your knee-jerk reaction. In your second draft, you need to find things like that. You need to be like, how can I give these lines to my main character instead of these crucial lines to the side character? Or something.
Jamie, a perfect note on this is Michael Bay said the reason he cast Michael Biehn was because number one, his look, and because of his reputation, was people wouldn't think that he would kill him off right away.
Right.
And that he would become a major character for the rest of the movie.
I almost put the shower scene on. Yeah.
No, and like that's literally, I think that's what Jamie's saying is like Michael Biehn would have taken away so much of Goodspeed's time and effort if he stayed alive, right?
Yes.
But they just kill like a guy who looks like a main character.
Yeah.
To leave
has
room
the gravitas that we associate. It's like just like with the Samuel Jackson in Deep Blue Sea.
Mm-hmm. Right. Or Steven Seagal, an executive decision.
Yeah.
There's a thing in horror, I call it kill the competent.
Right. Yeah,
that's exactly what it is. It's like establish somebody as the most competent, the guy that keeps you safe, the guy that's going to do it, and then kill him.
But you're totally right, Bob. In those lesser drafts, that guy,
like Michael Biehn, would have stayed alive
the whole movie, and then
he said he gets killed right away.
Yeah, man.
They should have cast Steven Seagal in that role.
No, Michael Biehn rules. Come on. I think like Michael Bay said, it was because of Aliens. That's why he wanted.
Yeah, I mean, it totally makes sense. Am I up?
Yeah.
Yeah. So now I got Mason, and his is a little longer, so mine is a little longer. But I'm gonna try to speed through, especially since you guys did two of the techniques that I also did, which is perfect. I was kind of shocked. I feel like I never would have thought this, as I said in my opening, that I think Mason's setup is kind of a masterclass. Like,
Jesus.
It's like so fucking packed with technique and craft.
I never thought you guys would compliment The Rock as much as you have. I was not expecting it to go like this.
So awesome. I didn't even use, I found like 4 more techniques that I'm not even going to do. I just decided which were the best 5.
Okay.
So I found 5 techniques that Mason setup uses that we talk about a lot. The one I'm going to go into deeper after this, so I'll just breeze through it. There's a praise of the killer speech for Mason in his opening, and then The second one is I'll do Mason's things that need fixing. And it was interesting as Jamie was reading his, I could almost read what I wrote for Mason, but through different contexts, right? Okay. So Jamie already set up the things that need fixing. And Mason has his own, which is changes in attractiveness or personality. Well, he's been locked up in solitary confinement for 30 years, so he like doesn't know how to interact with other people, and he's got this shaggy look, and he eventually gets a makeover into a nice dapper look with a suit.
The meta context is he does not look like James Bond anymore.
He does not look like, right? So we're like, whoa, James Bond's looking rough.
You're right.
So number one. So number two, false beliefs. This one I feel like is part of his. We're not really talking about his arcing, but like he believes he can't trust anyone. That's his false belief, because he actually can trust Nicolas Cage's character and learns to trust him over the course of the story. He believes he can't trust anyone, especially the government that betrayed him. Strained personal relationships. He's never met his daughter, and he has no relationship with her whatsoever. So, I mean, that one's very easy, and that creates his personal... I love that every one of these that we did, their strained personal relationship is their personal stakes for their whole mission, right? He wants to get out so that he can forge a better relationship with her. And Nicolas Cage Stanley wants to get out of the situation so he can, be a father.
And both of them are in San Francisco, and they're going to die.
Yes, the stakes are, we know them. We've seen their faces. They put a face on the stakes for us. Number four, not being entrusted with responsibility or not able to handle responsibility. The government refuses to give him even basic human rights or acknowledge his existence. Being on that note, being invisible to key people or seeking invisibility, he is literally does not exist on paper, according to official records. So he has been erased. And that needs to be fixed. Number six, others don't believe in you or you've given up on yourself. Nobody believes he deserves freedom or justice after 30 years, even though he's wrongfully imprisoned. So
it's not even that. Like, people don't know. Like, it's like one guy knows he exists pretty much.
One guy.
Womack, and he hates him.
One guy has given up on him, and that has, exactly. So the third technique, building off of that, the rooting resume. So... And when Jamie described Hummel, it almost sounds exactly the same, but it's amazing how much craft is on display for all three of these. That's why it feels so engaging and exciting. They're underdogs. The world treats them unjustly. Yeah, he's been locked up in solitary confinement for 30 years for something that he shouldn't be locked up for, without a trial. They're Rodney Dangerfields. They get no respect. The government erased his identity and claims he doesn't exist. They care about someone or something, his daughter. They try very hard to make their lives better. This dude has escaped from Alcatraz, and then when he gets out, he escapes from, his most recent captors. It's like, man, does he try to make his life better. They subvert the next one. They're fun and charming. He's actually like kind of a curmudgeon and bitter, but he's witty, and that makes him funny. Like,
I mean, he's pretty fucking charming.
I mean,
come on, he is.
He's
also Sean Connery.
Charming, but he's an asshole the entire time. He's really gritting. I wouldn't call that like funny.
He's not trying. It's more in the execution that he's charming than it is the page.
The writing. Yeah. We know their struggle. They have a secret pain. We know about his isolation. We learn very quickly that he was betrayed by the government, and lost his entire life and existence, basically. Number six, we wish we were more like them. He's always the smartest person in the room. Outsmarts everyone with his intellect and his references. He never gives up, keeps fighting despite decades of imprisonment, cuts through the BS. Every time someone tries to like pull the wool over him and act like they're going to be honest, he's like, you can tell he knows they're bullshitting him and lying to him. They're the best at something. He's literally the only person to have ever escaped Alcatraz. He's the best.
Yeah, right.
So we got all three of them are the best. It's so good. Okay, technique number 4. Comic obsessions. He actually has 2 of them. So I'm not going to go deep into this one. But this is a Robert McKee technique where characters who exhibit an extreme behavior that they perceive as normal. but others perceive as out of the ordinary. And this is his constant historical references of historical figures who have been wronged by their society, which is Alcimedes, Sir Walter Raleigh, and I can't pronounce the other one, Solzhenitsyn. I wrote it down from what he said, but he's constantly quoting Latin. So he's got like 3 Latin quotes. So he's got a comedic obsession with historical references and Latin references. So, and the setup, that's what creates this persona that's memorable about him.
He would get along with Paul Giamatti from The Holdovers.
They're very similar in that way, right?
Right.
That's a great comp. How weird.
I know, it's such a different movie.
All right, technique number 5. But you see how these work no matter the
yeah, they work.
Technique number 5, MacGyver moves. I mean, damn. So this is something, as Jamie was just talking about, he sees a lot of it, some of the stuff we talked about in other intros done wrong in Newbies. I am constantly reading scripts where the tactic that the character takes is the most general, basic. It's the tactic I would take. It's the tactic you would take. It's the thing that you would do. And you don't want that to be the case. You want the character to be as creative and unique as possible in how they're, going about overcoming the obstacles. Right. So, and I called this the MacGyver exercise, from the MacGyver show that we don't need to go into for the youngins. Listen to this. The MacGruber exercise. Yeah, more people are more likely to know that than MacGyver. But Mason, instead of the generic tactic that I'd read in a script, is him just like jumping out the hotel window, right?
Yeah.
No, Mason orders elaborate room service to distract the FBI guards. Then while the FBI agents are stuffing his faces, he had stolen the hotel's
clothesline,
like soap on a rope clothesline.
No, it's the clothesline that you pull out.
The clothesline.
To hang shit on.
Pulled that out while he was taking a shower. And then he pretends that he's shaking on Womack's lie that he's gonna set him free after he helps him, and instead he ties that guy with the string and hangs him over the edge to negotiate his escape from Nicolas Cage. So like that's as elaborate and clever and unique as it gets, and totally tracks with a guy who escaped Alcatraz, right?
Not only does he escape, he gets revenge during the escape.
During the escape on Womack, he sticks it to him. Yes, so it's as unique to that character as you can get, and very memorable. And it's like so crazy how that little string setup is all you need for later. The payoff when he's in the jail cell and he rips the bed sheet and then ties it to something and uses it to unlock. That dates back to him having the string and knot and tossing of string skill set that we saw in that scene. And it was such a dramatic scene that you didn't even need a reminder of it, So it's just right there, 5 techniques. And I didn't even like come close to like listing all of the techniques in Mason's intro. It's a fucking great.
Dense.
Yeah, dude, it's so good. Criterion for a reason.
Yeah, that's right. It's an earned criterion. Let's get that 4K
Jamie,
going.
Are you still there?
Yeah, are you okay, Jamie? I don't know. Jamie, your mic is on mute. But Jamie might not be okay. I don't know.
Jamie might be gone. People who are listening, he's just frozen on the screen, and so we haven't heard him say anything for like 5 minutes.
Oh, wait.
There he is. Jamie, did you go?
My mic did have an issue, but I fixed it. It muted me when I fixed it.
You were trying to talk out while I did book report.
My headphones went out, and I had to do a whole replug and reset and stuff while you guys were talking.
That's how fucking really long funny. That first book report was. I got more book reports.
Did you have anything you wanted to add about?
I don't remember. I was chiming in, and it happened. It was actually, it's been fixed for a while, but I didn't realize it had muted me. So
you were just talking and we were completely
You're muted again. You're muted again. Okay.
Yeah. No, I'm just testing.
I'm not going to delete this.
No, I love that
I'm leaving it.
The warts and all in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. All of a sudden, my headphones went out. I don't know.
That's fine.
Who knows? Who knows?
So
Jamie,
that was your.
Did you have anything to share on the Mason intro?
No, my big thing with the Mason intro, it reminded me a lot of like Silence of the Lambs in some ways. So it seemed like that type of legendary character, that hype the killer kind of stuff that I think we talk about a lot. So that was my favorite part about him, I think, was just how hyped. I love when I don't know, I'm a big sucker for hyping. Like I love Silence of the Lambs for that reason. And the other movie that comes to mind, now I can't think of the title. What's the Stephen King, John Cusack, The Apartment?
1408.
1408. Like
it's an evil fucking room.
like I love
that quote.
Once they get in the room, that movie isn't as interesting to me. But I love the beginning of that movie. Like it's just, there's something about hyping things like that really I think is effective.
Do you like Steve Buscemi's introduction in Con Air?
I don't remember it.
Never mind. Yeah, okay.
We'll have to do that one.
Okay, I'll do Con Air.
The funny thing is I've seen that one probably more than I've seen this one, but I like this one better now.
Jamie, you just gave the best segue
to the praise the killer speeches.
There you go.
Yeah. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about, that I briefly talked about in Mason's intro, is praise of the killer speeches, and in this case, that it's a good example of it doesn't necessarily have to be quote unquote killer. It could be praise of the villain, and we've done some episodes in comedy where this even works. Praise of the villain speech, and it's where characters. This is another thing I learned in a Robert McKee seminar. It is giving your. There are characters who vocalize something about another character that gives them gravitas, that gives the villain gravitas. And then we've talked about subversions like John Wick. The praise of the killer speech is about John Wick. And in The Northman, even the praise of the killer speech is about the main character in The Northman. So it doesn't necessarily always have to be about your villain. It's genre specific. It's the, whoever the POV is. But and these are often talked about in horror by the half-man character, like Dr. Loomis and Mike talking about Michael Myers. I met him 15 years ago. I was told there was nothing left. All of that. Kyle Reese talking about Michael Biehn. Reese telling Sarah Connor about the Terminator. It's out there. It can't be bargained with. It can't be reasoned with. It doesn't feel pity or remorse or fear. And it's Quint's Indianapolis monologue. It's Ash and Alien saying it's a perfect organism. It can't, And so what I thought was cool, this is like the thing this movie does, to Jamie's point, like the best, man. There are so many praise of the killer speeches. There's praise of the killer speeches for Hummel. There's praise of the killer speeches for Mason. There's praise of the killer speeches for the bomb.
Right.
So I just wanted to go through a couple of them. Like the FBI director says it was General Hummel from Vietnam. 3 tours: Grenada, Desert Storm, Panama, 3 Purple Hearts, 2 Silver Stars, the Congressional Medal. Jesus, this man is a hero. And then someone interrupts and says, legend is a better description. So there you go. I mean, even Mason, when he meets him, he says, I know you were big in Vietnam. I saw the highlights on television. I mean, that's his own little giving him gravitas. And then we hear about Mason. 30 years ago, he was a highly trained SAS operative. He broke out of 2 maximum security prisons. He can't get onto the streets. I mean, damn, we haven't even met him yet. And then the gas, like Stanley says, it's very, very horrible, sir. It's one of those things we wish we could disinvent. And, they say in the war room, 1 teaspoon of this detonated in the atmosphere will kill every living organism in an 8-block radius. I mean, yes. So these things are impactful. So if you're out there, if you have a villain, or even if you have like kind of a MacGuffin that's a villain, this is a really impactful way to like very easily make us feel you need the hype man or the hype woman for your villain or for your big killer MacGuffin. And Jamie, when you were talking about Silence of the Lambs, there's 3 praise of this killer speeches for Hannibal Lecter before she walks in and faces him.
Right.
in his cell.
Mhm.
So you've
We've,
had
and
three
we've
different
done
people
that
to
movie
give-
too. If you want to,
We have.
Yep.
So, and we've done those speeches. Yeah. They do that with John Doe and Seven too. There's like 3 different Praise of the Killer speeches before you finally meet him. So, yeah.
Very cool. It's this I don't think I realized how many Praise the Killers there were until this
Yeah.
watch.
Mm.
And I've
There's
seen
like-
it so many times, I just never looked for it.
And they keep coming back as a
Yeah,
reminder.
they keep reminding you.
Does,
Right.
I can't remember. Does Alcatraz get a hype speech?
Ooh.
I can't remember if it does.
You know
I mean-
what? It probably does by the guy who's doing the tour guy. He's like, these are the
Right.
Yeah.
worst of the worst lived here, and
It's-
blah blah blah.
It's inescapable. It's
Yes,
it's
exactly.
separated by land, and
That counts. I think that totally counts. He's not being intense, but
Yeah,
it counts.
they're burying it with joke.
Right,
yeah.
right.
Yeah,
He's saying it often. He's being authentic about the truth about it, so it's fine.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yes,
Right. Okay. Dialogue repetition.
This is one that I just felt like I think Michael Bay does movies and peak Hollywood arch plot cheeseburgers that this is do this really well.
Right.
And it's a really easy one to learn from, so I thought it would be good. So
this is what Tarantino did. He just repeated.
he just
Probably.
he just sat down and wrote the same line 3
That's right.
times.
That's right.
He does it. He does it in lines with itself. Like he said,
He does.
"Come on, ramblers, let's get rambling."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Like that.
So repetition, and I'm going to use some examples from other episodes because instead of me saying, so if you hear my examples and you like this, you want to learn more, we do a lot more about this in these episodes I'm going to reference. So repetition of all forms can be used to easily track the progress of regression of a character or a relationship, and like a character situation where a character's like growing pains, etc. So one easy way to do that is through dialogue, and you do a dialogue setup, then you repeat it, and then you reverse it to show how that character has either progressed or regressed, and the payoff is the reversal. So some famous examples is, hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my mother, prepared to die. Killed my father, prepared to die, from The Princess Bride. That's all it is, a leap of faith from Peter Parker and Miles Morales in Into the Spider-Verse, which we also did. We Don't Trade Lives, Captain America and Vision in Infinity War. Every time a bell rings, an angel gets his wings is repeated and reversed in It's a Wonderful Life, which we also did. The Rock has 4. And they're not all reversed, but they're repeated and changed. The one is Need to Know Basis. That's constantly repeated. Like, it starts out as serious and then it becomes like a joke.
Right.
That's Classified. They do the same thing. Like, it's very serious when Mason's background, people are asking about Mason's background. That's Classified. And as the movie evolves and changes and he gets more comfortable, he starts wielding it as that's Classified, like as a joke, like get off my ass. Bob, you pointed this one out. I love pressure. So in the setup, Stanley actually says like, I love pressure. I eat it for breakfast, when he's like,
Yeah.
and then but he's actually fucking freaking out. And then as he gets more comfortable with being a field agent, he says it again, like, God, I love pressure.
Right.
Except now we know like he can handle it.
Yeah.
So it's using the line to show us how he's growing. It's like that's why
His delivery is actually changed. That's the growth. He says the same thing, but yeah.
But I love how all of these and this is you also referenced this one, Bob, which is the eat this. This is a quick one, but the soldier, when he's shooting at Stanley and throws a grenade at Stanley, he says, "Eat this." And then when that same soldier and Stanley are fighting face to face, he puts the gas bulb in his mouth and says, "Eat this, fucker." Right. I mean, that's a 1-2 setup, payoff dialogue. And even as simple as that one is, notice how that's showing how the character and relationship is changing.
Right.
So I think it's really important to notice how almost always this dialogue repetition, you think of it and you just laugh and you think like, oh, I remember that. But it really is pointing out for us, without even having to say anything, how the character or the relationship are changing, either from a growth standpoint or for a regression standpoint. And this one's a really easy, like Disney level examples of learning from it. So yeah.
And it adds levity and humor.
It has levity and humor.
For as substantive as it can be, it's fun. It's funny a lot of the time.
It's funny.
I'm not all sure. The time. It's not all the time, but it can add a lot of humor.
Yeah. The next one is mine too, but I think I just want to cut it because it's just too big, and I feel like I've micro machined enough.
Are you sure?
Yeah, the meaningful choices. It's okay. So long. Yeah, I want to cut it on the fly.
Or if you don't want to talk about it, I'm not going to force you, but you can if you want. That means Hummel's early exit. That's what you wanted to talk about too, right?
Yeah, I put that on there. I don't have anything from a writing standpoint like to say. I just wanted to talk about it with you guys because just like the triple setup, this is also something, especially like of its time, the 90s like genre expectation. It's hard to put yourself back there, but like these movies, they built to a finale of Hans versus John.
Yes,
you know, they were, when anyone watching this movie in 1996, they were strapped in and ready for Nicolas Cage versus Ed Harris.
It's always the funny thing about this time period of these movies too is like the bad guy was usually not as in shape,
and
he still had to be the one that faces off against the Arnold Schwarzenegger or something.
It makes me think of Tommy Lee Jones in Under Siege.
Yeah, something like that. Right. But what this movie does, not you like you pointed out, it was subversive to kill him early, and what this movie does so well is everything Jamie said at the beginning about Hummel's character. He can't be that guy at the end that Nick Cage shoves the thing in his mouth. He can't be that guy. And what it does so deftly is it has those three officers or two officers that aren't his normal command that turn out to be psychopaths.
Yes, they become the villains.
They're actually the guys that would explode the rocket. The rest of them
were like, always the villain all along.
They were always the villain, right? And they, you know, the movie gives you the people that will end the movie because he cannot be that guy. Like if they weren't there, this movie would have just stopped.
Right there.
He would have been like, "We're not doing this. It's over." He said it.
It would have rang false if he would have blown up those people. Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm saying Ed Harris would have just. He said they called our bluff. We're not doing it, and they all would have been like, "Oh, that's the end of the movie."
Right.
Right. I mean,
the interesting thing about this, to your point, is. And I think today you'd almost be better served. And it depends on the movie. If you were coming up with such a great villain like this, maybe the early exit is the way to go. You know, but how many movies come up with a villain quite like this that ends up you actually like the villain more by the end of the story than like them less or something. You respect them even more. There's not a lot of movies that pull that off, but maybe some non-action movies kind of pull that off more. But the thing I would say. This might have, and this is just me pulling this out of my butt, but it might actually have like its roots in James Bond stuff because when I think of James Bond stuff, like I can barely remember villains' deaths aside from the henchmen. You know, the Odd Job. There's always the second the bodyguard.
They're the physical threat,
and they get a good fight, but that usually gets dismissed, and then Bond has to defuse the bomb. So the villain goes away. The bomb is the threat.
So you're saying like Tony Todd is the bomb in this movie, kind of outside of the real bomb.
There is a bomb in this movie.
So the bomb becomes the villain.
The bomb becomes the villain.
Right. Yeah.
So in movies that have a bomb, usually that is the final.
Yeah.
You know,
that's a good call. It's
like not to bring it up again, but in MacGruber they kill Val Kilmer and then have to defuse the bomb.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's exactly what happens.
No, that's a great point, Jamie. Yes.
And a lot of those villains are out of shape and stuff too, because they're like Goldfinger isn't a guy that's going to fight you,
right,
necessarily. Not that Ed Harris couldn't fight, but he's not necessarily portrayed as like Mr. Kung Fu or something like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's just like
he's almost Mason's age.
Yeah.
So there, and that could have been a thing in a lesser script. I think him versus Mason or something like that.
Yeah, it's kind of like the way Batgirl used to always get a female henchman to fight or something like that. You know what I mean? Like you'd almost
and they're so similar in their forgotten by the world and betrayed narrative. It's like, why wouldn't they? But it doesn't do that. So
it'd be cool if they had a duel. Sword fight on the steps.
But then they kind of it'd be like Princess Bride, where they both kind of realize, they respect each other, and then they kind of just like let's not do this or something. I will say this, like I it's one of the few villain deaths where I'm like, I actually don't want him to leave the movie. It's not a knock, that's a compliment. Like I like this guy enough. I don't want him to die. And even though he's responsible for all this, he's a really good character that I didn't want him to die. So.
Yeah, I love that his last line is, "What have I done?" And then he dies.
He regrets everything he did.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, in the end, he got more of his men killed.
Exactly. And other soldiers too.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, like he got more of his men killed and dishonorably.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So like he made everything worse.
But he dies thinking he's about to cause a mass casualty event in San Francisco. I mean, that's a big thing.
Yeah.
He thinks that he caused that.
It's pretty tragic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's everything, unless you guys have more on that. The last note I have that I wanted to read was Nick Cage improvised him saying, "Oh, why not?" And in the commentary, he says that one quote symbolizes the entire movie for him. Oh, why not? He doesn't explain it, but I thought that was really funny. It's just like, oh, why not? That's it. Anyway,
what was Nick Cage's, not to open up an IMDb can of worms?
Sure, yeah.
Like prior to this, what were his recent movies?
It was mostly Lynch and Coen Brothers, right?
Yeah.
Like before this,
this was kind of his turning
action
point?
thing. Yeah, this was
because I was gonna say Moonstruck was 87, so
right. Like this was a turning point in his career, and I'll say this: the commentary is really cool because Nick Cage is like wrestling with what action movies mean to him, and like the art of them and everything. Like he's approaching it very scholarly about. He's talking about this movie, and this was recorded 25 years ago.
I love hearing those commentaries, those time capsules of people who haven't like he hadn't become the full Nicolas Cage. I mean, now
there's no Rage Cage or any of that.
Yeah. Like it hasn't.
It's all before that.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at IMDb, Jamie.
Yeah, Leaving Las Vegas was the movie prior to this.
Oh,
and that's like such a turn, right?
Exactly.
Like that's nothing like.
But then
there's literally nothing like.
But then after this, you get Con Air next. You get Face Off. Then he goes to City of Angels. Then Snake Eyes 8mm, and then Bringing Out the Dead, and then Gone in 60 Seconds. Yeah.
What a career, man.
Yeah.
God.
Still going.
Still going.
We got to do Face Off one day too.
Hell yeah, John Woo.
Yeah.
When I think of this era and stuff like that, Face Off's my favorite of the movies.
I love Face. Yeah. We showed Mondo, Baltimore, for anyone that's local. We showed Face Off to a crowd, and it was so awesome. There was a packed crowd. People lost their minds at that movie. It was great.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Anyway, let's not sit here and talk about other movies. The Rock.
Yeah.
Just like
for 20 minutes.
Okay, yeah. Do you guys have anything you want to plug or say?
I'll just say, again, I always think, if you have questions about this, about another episode, about any screenwriting topic you want us to talk about, hit us up at writersblockbusterspodcast@gmail.com.
And
Nothing here.
Jamie,
I don't have anything.
I was gonna just say Jamie's spiel. If it always helps us if you just share the podcast, leave reviews on any of the million websites that or apps or whatever the hell. I don't even know how people listen to things anymore. Leave a comment, share it, recommend it to people. The three of us, we all are online, but I wouldn't call any of us influencers.
No.
So anything helps.
Yeah, and when you review, for anyone listening, how it works is when you review something on Apple, for instance, it bumps us up in the search of screenwriting shows to the top, basically, every time we get a new review. It kind of like reboots our discoverability every single new review we get. So it really does help.
Even just typing "I love this show."
Yeah,
that's fine. You don't have to write a paragraph.
Jimmy.
Shut up, Jimmy. These guys don't know anything. Whatever you want to write. Yeah.
Even if you put a negative review, somebody will discover our show more. So go for it.
The Rock sucks, just like this podcast. It's fine. Well, I guess that's everything, guys.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Hey, this is Bob Rose, and thank you for listening to Writers Blockbusters. If you'd like to financially support the show, please consider joining my Patreon. I've been producing the podcast for several years completely out of pocket, and I'd like to keep producing it ad-free and no longer at a loss. If you'd like to help, head on over to patreon.com/Bob Rose Sucks. That's right, Bob Rose Sucks. And if you want the one and only Jimmy George to help polish up that writing project you're kind of struggling with, head on over to scriptbutcher.com. As a listener, you already know he's the best there is, scriptbutcher.com. You can also support the show by simply sharing it or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We appreciate both. Thank you for listening, and see you next episode.